The night Abraham Lincoln won the presidency in 1860, the United States began to tear itself apart. Before he even stepped into the White House, 7 southern states had already declared they would leave the Union. No battles had been fought, no armies had marched, yet the nation was already breaking. To many Americans in the South, Lincoln represented a threat to their entire way of life, not because he had promised to abolish slavery immediately, but because he believed it should stop expanding into new territories. To them, that idea alone was unacceptable. And so, before the new president could even take office, the seeds of civil war had already been planted. When Abraham Lincoln began his journey from Illinois to Washington, D.C., in early 1861, the trip felt less like a celebration, more like a mission through hostile territory. Rumors of assassination plots followed him from city to city. In one case, detectives warned of a plan to kill him while he passed through Baltimore. To stay alive, Lincoln had to secretly change trains and slip into the capital under cover of darkness. It was an eerie beginning for a president who would soon face the greatest crisis in American history. Lincoln did not look like the typical leader of a nation on the brink of war. He was tall, awkward, and self-taught. He had grown up in poverty inside a small log cabin on the American frontier. His education came mostly from borrowed books and long nights of reading by candlelight. He had lost several elections before finally winning the presidency. But what many people underestimated was his mind. Lincoln possessed an extraordinary ability to think strategically and communicate clearly, and understand the deeper meaning of the crisis unfolding before him. He believed one thing above all else: the Union must survive. The crisis exploded in April 1861. Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter, a Union military fort in South Carolina. For 34 hours, cannon fire echoed across Charleston Harbor. When the fort finally surrendered, the American Civil War had officially begun. Lincoln now faced an impossible decision. If he called for troops to fight the rebellion, he risked pushing more states into the Confederacy. But if he did nothing, the United States might simply dissolve. Lincoln made his choice. He called for 75,000 volunteers to defend the Union. Within weeks, 4 more states joined the Confederacy. The nation was now fully at war. Many Americans believed the war would be quick. Some even treated the first major battle like entertainment. At the first Battle of Bull Run, civilians from Washington came to watch the fight, bringing picnic baskets and blankets. They expected a short, dramatic victory. Instead, they witnessed chaos. Union forces were defeated, soldiers fled in panic, and the reality of war struck the nation with brutal force. Lincoln quickly realized something important. This war would not end quickly, and it would demand far more sacrifice than anyone had imagined. In the early years of the war, Lincoln faced another problem: ineffective generals. One of the most famous was General George McClellan. McClellan built a massive and well-trained army, but he hesitated constantly. He believed Confederate forces were larger than they actually were. He delayed battles. He avoided decisive action. Lincoln grew increasingly frustrated. At one point, he joked, "If General McClellan does not want to use the army, I would like to borrow it." Behind the humor, however, was a growing sense of urgency. The Union needed victories. At the start of the war, Lincoln insisted the conflict was about saving the Union, not ending slavery. He feared that if he moved too quickly against slavery, border states might join the Confederacy. But the war itself began to change him. Thousands of enslaved people escaped plantations and fled to Union lines. Abolitionists demanded stronger action, and Lincoln began to realize something powerful. Slavery was not just a moral issue. It was also the foundation of the Confederate war effort. If slavery ended, the Confederacy would weaken. In September 1862, after the brutal Battle of Antietam, Lincoln made one of the most important decisions of the war. Antietam had been the bloodiest single day in American history. More than 22,000 soldiers were killed or wounded in just one day. The battle gave Lincoln the opportunity he needed. He issued the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. Beginning January 1, 1863, enslaved people in Confederate territory would be declared free. The war had now changed forever. The Union was no longer fighting only to preserve the nation. It was fighting to destroy slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation also changed international politics. Countries like Britain and France had considered supporting the Confederacy. But now, the war had become a fight against slavery. Supporting the Confederacy would mean supporting the continuation of slavery. Public opinion in Europe shifted, and the Confederacy lost the chance for powerful international allies. Lincoln had turned a political gamble into a strategic advantage. In July 1863, the war reached one of its most dramatic turning points. At Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Union and Confederate armies clashed for 3 days. In one of the largest battles ever fought in North America, more than 50,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing. The Confederate invasion of the North failed. The tide of the war began to shift. Months later, Lincoln traveled to Gettysburg to dedicate a cemetery for the fallen soldiers. His speech lasted barely 2 minutes. Yet those words became some of the most famous in history. He said the war was testing whether a nation conceived in liberty could endure, and he promised that government of the people, by the people, for the people would not perish from the earth. Even after Gettysburg, victory was far from certain. Casualties continued to rise. Entire cities were devastated. Critics attacked Lincoln constantly. Some accused him of becoming a dictator for suspending certain civil liberties during the war. Others believed he was not aggressive enough in ending slavery. By 1864, many Americans were exhausted by the war. Lincoln himself believed he might lose the upcoming presidential election. If that happened, the war might end with a negotiated peace, leaving the nation divided. But then, the tide shifted again. Union General Ulysses S. Grant launched relentless campaigns against Confederate forces. Unlike earlier generals, Grant understood that the Union's greatest advantage was endurance. The North had more soldiers, more factories, more resources. If the pressure never stopped, the Confederacy would eventually collapse. In September 1864, Union forces captured the city of Atlanta. Northern morale surged. Lincoln won re-election. The end of the war was finally approaching. In April 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. After 4 years of war, the Confederacy was defeated. The United States had survived its greatest internal crisis. Slavery was officially abolished with the 13th Amendment, but the victory came at an enormous cost. An estimated 750,000 people had died. It was the deadliest war in American history. Lincoln did not celebrate victory with revenge. Instead, he spoke about healing. In his second inaugural address, he urged Americans to rebuild the nation with malice toward none, with charity for all. He hoped the country could reunite peacefully, but he would never get the chance to lead that reconstruction. On April 14, 1865, just days after the war effectively ended, Abraham Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater. During the performance, an actor named John Wilkes Booth entered the president's private box. Booth was a Confederate sympathizer who believed Lincoln had destroyed the South. He shot the president in the back of the head. The next morning, Abraham Lincoln died. The man who had guided the nation through its darkest moment was gone. Lincoln's story is filled with contradictions. He began the war focused only on preserving the Union, but the war transformed him into the leader who helped destroy slavery. He faced criticism from every direction, yet he remained determined to hold the country together. His leadership did not just win a war, it redefined the meaning of the United States itself. The American Civil War was more than a conflict between North and South. It was a test of whether democracy itself could survive division, violence, and injustice. Abraham Lincoln carried that burden through 4 brutal years of war, and in doing so, he preserved the nation at its most fragile moment. History remembers generals and battles, but sometimes, the fate of a nation rests on the courage of one leader, to stand firm when everything else is falling apart. If you enjoy powerful historical stories that reveal how the past shaped our world today, subscribe to Vaulted Media for more fascinating and educational history.